What's up, guys? The UFC Fight Night card headlined by Kamaru Usman and Joaquin Buckley is this Saturday, and June just has a lot of good main events. For the last card, I had 11 correct and 2 incorrect, and I had 6 confident picks correct with only 1 of them incorrect. Confident picks are any fighters with a 70% chance of winning and higher. And a lot of people ask as well, like, what is my overall pick rate right now? I get 66% of my picks correct this year so far. And as for my confident picks, I get 74% of them correct. And we'll see how this card goes, but regardless, it's a great Fight Night card. And the next one is going to be really good too. There's a total of 13 fights. The main card starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, so the prelims start at 4 p.m. Eastern. And it's a good one. I would say it's like an 8 out of 10 Fight Night card. Usman vs. Buckley is a fantastic fight. Finally, he's back. Where has Kamaru Usman been this whole time? We've been wanting to see him fight, and it's been ever since he fought Khamzat that he stepped into the octagon, whereas Buckley is the exact opposite. He fought 4 times last year, but it did take him a while to come back after his last one. A full half year since he fought Colby Covington in December. I really like the Cody Garbrandt Raoni Barcelos fight. Paul Craig versus Rodolfo Bellato is a chance for Paul Craig to get back on the winning column. Michael Chiesa versus Court McGee, another good fight between 2 veterans, just like Garbrandt and Barcelos in a way. We got some fights where they're taking the lamb to get slaughtered. Cody Brundage versus Mansur Abdul-Malik, as well as Alonzo Menifield versus Oumar. Those are 2 fights where they're pretty much sacrificing one of their veterans for the next rising contender. Mansur and C could get decently far in their divisions. And man, do they need them, right? They need new talent like these guys over Menifield and Brundage. I mean, Brundage was never really ranked and not a high-level fighter, but I think the Bo Nickel performance made him look a lot better. But honestly, I think it made Bo Nickel look more beatable than anything else. Along with those 2 undefeated prospects, they have Wellmaker on the fight as well. And he's going up against Kris Moutinho. Kris Moutinho, for those who don't remember, is the green-headed guy who got destroyed, picked apart, and styled on by Sean O'Malley. Very tough fighter, a granite chin, will stay in the fight against one of the very best, but eventually did get TKO'd in that 3rd round. Well, he has returned and improved ever since his last UFC loss to Guido Canetti. Now on a 5-fight win streak, all finishes. So that should be an interesting fight. Cody Durden versus Jose Ochoa, Ricky Simon versus Cameron Smotherman, and Phil Rowe versus Andre Lusa are all good fights. And Vanessa Demopoulos versus Jamie Lynn Horth is like a warm-up to the card, in a way. To be honest, that is by far the worst fight on the entire card by a mile. Like, it's not even close. But I would say the prospect of the card, honestly, it's 3 fighters. They all go decently far in their weight classes. Mansur Abdul-Malik, Oumar, and Wellmaker. These are your 3 prospects of the card. They're all undefeated. They're all finishers, especially Mansur and Wellmaker, and all fights definitely worth watching. The fighter of the night, I would say the 2 guys in the main event, Kamaru Usman and Joaquin Buckley, for different reasons. Usman in the fact that he's the biggest name on the card. He's a legend, one of the greatest welterweights of all time, and he's lost 3 in a row. We want to see if he can rebound to compete with the best fighters in his weight class still. Is he able to do that, or is Joaquin Buckley really that good? If Buckley gets a good win here, he could get a title shot. So it's almost like the resurgence of a legend versus the surging contender. The stake of the night, the fighter that absolutely needs a win, I will say is Paul Craig. If Paul Craig loses to Rodolfo Bellato, he's probably going to get cut from the UFC. He's on a 3-fight loss streak to 3 different opponents. He's also 1-4 in his last 5 fights. He lost to Bo Nickel, Caio Borralho, and Brendan Allen. Borralho and Allen are decent losses, I guess, because those guys are ranked. The Bo Nickel loss is different. You know, Nickel's not as good as those other guys. But the thing about Kamaru Usman is he lost to Khamzat at middleweight, short notice, a different weight class, you know, majority decision loss. He also lost to Leon Edwards by majority decision and got knocked out the fight before that. Both of those were title fights. It's different than Paul Craig, you know. If Usman loses to Buckley, he's still going to be around. He's still going to fight unless he decides he wants to retire. Losing to Buckley is like losing to one of the best in the world. It's different than losing to Bellato. And then the banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card. Honestly, it might be Wellmaker versus Kris Moutinho. Both guys are finishers. Moutinho's better than ever. He's willing to stand with his opponent and trade. Wellmaker is very powerful, a finisher. Should be an exciting fight. And then the sleeper of the night, the most slept on fight on the card, I would say Alonzo Menifield versus Oumar. That should be a good fight. And then the overall best fight on the entire card, I would say, is the main event. Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. And with that, let's go to the first fight. Vanessa Demopoulos versus Jamie Lynn Horth. I'm going to go with Jamie Lynn Horth. She's way bigger. Demopoulos has never fought at flyweight before in the UFC. She's also taking the fight on short notice, as JLH was supposed to fight Teresa Bleda, and she's just going to overpower and outreach Demopoulos for most of that fight. She has decent footwork, throws some good long strikes, and Demopoulos can be very sloppy in technique, and she probably wants to take the fight to the ground, but against a much bigger opponent like JLH, it's not going to be easy at all. So Jamie Lynn Horth by unanimous decision. I think it should be mostly one-sided. And then we go to Phil Rowe versus Andre Lusa. These two guys have not fought in about a year. Phil Rowe fought in June of 2024, in July of 2024, which could turn out to be a striker versus grappler matchup, where Phil Rowe obviously has the boxing advantage. He has the longer reach, much better with his hands, and puts together combinations well, has a very good jab, and Andre Lusa, he can lose composure in the striking very easily. You saw that against Brian Battle, and he does his best when he's shooting takedowns constantly, and he needs to do so against Phil Rowe. He has a lower stance, likes to throw in drop feints, making it look like he's going to shoot a takedown. It gets his opponent to drop his hands, and then he can land a punch over the top. And he likes to do that against taller opponents, like when he fought Rhys McGee. Even in the first round of that fight, lowering his levels and drop feinting, then throwing the right hand over the top. And Andre Lusa can pressure Philip Rowe to the fence quite easily, throwing the overhand or shooting takedowns. Phil Rowe will start moving around the octagon. He's also going to try to counter too. So Phil Rowe's going to be throwing uppercuts, he's going to be throwing jabs, left hooks, and more importantly, knees. He likes that flying knee. He was throwing that a lot when he fought Orion Koski, landing those to the body, but he can also time the level change or the drop feint of Andre Lusa and land it to the head, knocking him out. But when Rowe throws that flying knee, he is so open to the counter overhand from Andre Lusa. So even though the drop feints are great technically for Andre Lusa, so he can establish his attacks a lot better, he does still throw punches kind of wild at times. And even Rhys McGee was able to land uppercuts against them. And Phil Rowe's takedown defense has gotten a lot better since he fought Jason Witt in 2022. He defended all of Neil Magny's and Nico Price's takedowns, which were two of his fights after that. He's a lot better in the clinch. He's a lot better hand fighting and breaking the grip of his opponent than he used to be. But I'm gonna go with Andre Lusa by decision. I think he's gonna win through his wrestling, land some right hands here and there. But the takedowns, the top control, that's most likely going to win him this fight. And then we go to Ricky Simon versus Cameron Smotherman. I'm going to go with Ricky Simon. I think his grappling is going to win him this fight. Smotherman does not have good takedown defense. He takes too much of a boxing approach to MMA, and I don't think he's going to stop the double legs or single legs from Ricky Simon. But Simon doesn't want to stand too much with Smotherman either, right? He wants to really hone in on his grappling to win him this fight. I mean, very heavy on his feet. He doesn't cut off the cage. He doesn't try to get away from the opponent's offense sometimes. So allow some good entry shots from Ricky Simon to get a single leg or a double leg, push him up against the fence, or get him from the ground in the center of the octagon, which will really be difficult for Cameron Smotherman to stand up. If Ricky Simon strikes too much, he could get knocked out, but I think his grappling should win him this fight by a unanimous decision. And then we go to Cody Durden versus Jose Ochoa. Cody Durden is well-rounded. He's a very scrappy fighter, very tough, and excels in his grappling, I think, more than his striking. He's a big guy for the weight class, and you saw that when he fought Joshua Van. He's very persistent on trying to get the fight to the ground when he has his opponent on the fence, and he's going to try to do the same thing against Jose Ochoa, but he does have a habit of ducking his head, and even defensively when his opponent is throwing strikes. That's how he got dropped by an uppercut from Bruno Silva, and he got dropped by a flying knee against Mohamed Mokaev, both because of that habit of his to duck his head. Now, Jose Ochoa is a very versatile striker, has good takedown defense, excellent with distance management, and throws out some creative, flashy strikes, and you saw that against Lonnie Kavanaugh. Is a switch stance fighter with excellent head kicks, and a great ability to get the back as well. I think overall, Cody Durden is outgunned in this fight. Most of the damage is probably going to be from Ochoa landing strikes on Durden, defending the takedowns, and then eventually landing a head kick, as Durden is ducking his head, leaning into it. TKO win for Jose Ochoa in the second round. And again, his ability to switch stances and fight very well from either of them is going to make it difficult on some of the takedowns that Durden wants to shoot forward, because the angle changes depending if the opponent is an orthodox or southpaw. And then we go to Malcolm Wellmaker versus Kris Moutinho, which I think is one of the best fights on the entire card. Kris Moutinho has returned to the UFC, and maybe he dyes his hair green again. He stopped doing that in some of his regional fights, but he's actually a lot better now. Go watch some of his fights after the UFC. The guy's gotten so much better. His boxing has improved. His scrambles on the ground has improved. He still has that southpaw pressuring style, will walk at his opponent, still doesn't cut off the cage that well, but his strength is a lot more precise and the form of his punches are 10 times better. And he's throwing in some like backstep left hand counters, good body kicks and head kicks and all of that. So he's going to bring the fight to Malcolm Wellmaker, and he'll even change angles mid-combination. Left straight and then angle off for the right hook. This is Kris Moutinho 2.0, and he's going to bring the fight to Malcolm Wellmaker and get knocked out. This is a one-sided fight. Even though Moutinho is actually a lot better, I think it doesn't change how this fight ever would have went against Wellmaker. Wellmaker hits so much harder, he's a better striker, and all he needs is one shot to change the entire fight. So even if Moutinho's landing, at any moment Wellmaker can drop him with a a perfect counter shot, just like he did against Cameron Simon. Cameron Simon got starched by one of the most vicious right hooks we've ever seen in the first round, and he was landing a lot of good body shots first, reaching all the way through with the jab to the body, leans in with the right hook to the body, and then steps away into his stance, waiting for Cameron Simon to get aggressive, and just KOs him with a right hook. This guy has different level power, and if Kris Moutinho brings the fight to him like he usually does, he gets in Wellmaker's face, he's going to get KO'd. It doesn't matter how good that chin is. Wellmaker will eventually put down Moutinho and win by knockout. So I'm going to go with Malcolm Wellmaker, spoiling the return of Kris Moutinho with a late first round knockout. And then we're going to Michael Chiesa versus Court McGee. Two good grapplers. Michael Chiesa is by far the bigger guy, and he has better grappling overall. Doesn't have the best chin, and loses composure when the opponent starts pressuring him. You saw that against Kevin Holland. It almost looked like he was panicking when Holland was getting more aggressive in the fight, throwing more strikes, and then eventually landed a knee. Court McGee could put that pressure, but he's just not super powerful like that. You know, Chiesa's probably not going to respect the power of McGee, and might throw some shots of his own. In fact, I think Chiesa hits harder. He's just not a technical striker. McGee can tough his way through and win some of the exchanges in the stand-up, but I think Chiesa wins this fight through his grappling. It's a good fight between veterans, and it's not going to be super technical until it goes to the ground. I think that's where McGee's going to scramble more, and then Chiesa's going to trap him in a choke, submit him in the third round. McGee's jab is going to be decent, maybe land some right hands, and Michael Chiesa's going to be moving all over that octagon, using his speed advantage, his athleticism to get away from McGee's strikes more than technique. I don't think Chiesa's striking defense is great technically, but he's so big for the weight class, and he seems more athletic than McGee. He's going to move around a lot and get away from some of the strikes, and then try to time a takedown or something like that. The scramble starts going. Chiesa establishes top position and either gets an arm triangle or gets the back for a rear naked choke. And then we go to Paul Craig versus Rodolfo Bellato. Oh man, is this a stylistic nightmare for Paul Craig. And honestly, Bellato's not that great either, but the guy's got good takedown defense. He hasn't been taken down a single time in the UFC yet. Jimmy Crute tried, Murtaza Tella tried, and neither of those guys were able to get him to the ground. Well, Crute did get him to the ground by dropping him, and that's the thing about Bellato. He doesn't have a chin. He's been dropped in 3 of his 4 UFC fights, but the thing is, Paul Craig is not a striker, and he's not that powerful. There are some grapplers who hit very hard, although they're not skilled in the stand-up, they can hit very hard, like they're very explosive. Paul Craig's not even that. He's just long and he's got some decent strikes that he throws. Like he has a decent jab, he has a decent straight, and he has good kicks, but he lacks the confidence in his striking to make him more effective. Rodolfo Bellato hits way harder than this guy. He has a lot more volume to his striking. He's so much better skilled there, mainly because of his confidence in his striking, combined with that power. That alone will beat Paul Craig in the stand-up. How does Craig get this fight to the ground? Because he has to. Pull guard, man. The veteran move. Pull guard, throw in a triangle choke, get beat up for like 2 minutes, and then throw in the triangle choke. He's got to get the vintage Paul Craig finish here, because if he doesn't, this might be his last fight in the UFC then. I mean, he even knows that. He's talked about it too. He said if he loses to Bellato, he thinks the UFC is going to cut him. So maybe we see prime Paul Craig in vintage form yet again. The same guy who submitted Magomed Ankalaev, who dislocated Jamal Hill's arm, who triangle choked Nikita Krylov and knocked out Shogun Rua. He has to be the best version of himself, because man, he's gonna need that. I'm going with Rodolfo Bellato by a first round knockout. Oh man, that's gonna be a terrible fight for Paul Craig. And the thing about Bellato getting the knockout earlier than some of the other guys that Craig has lost to is the fact that Bellato will be aggressive. He will throw a lot of strikes forward and not waste time. He's gonna try to get Craig out of there immediately in the fight, and I think he finishes him in the first round. But man, I hope Paul Craig performs well, because I want to see him still in the UFC, man. And then we go to Alonzo Menifield versus Oumar Sy. Oh, good golly, Oumar Sy is a 7-1 favorite. Honestly, I agree. This should be a one-sided fight. I think Oumar Sy is a much better fighter in everything. He's a better striker. He's technical in the stand-up too. He has good wrestling in both of his UFC fights. Very successful with his takedowns, and even got a submission win in his UFC debut. Crazy enough, he didn't even land a single strike against Tuco Tokos. First round rear naked choke with no strikes landed. Whereas Alonzo Menifield is very explosive. He's very powerful and has some of the lowest fight IQ I've ever seen. Still to this day, the way he went out there and tried to fight Carlos Ulberg is one of the most head-scratchy performances ever against a fast counter-striker with a one-punch knockout ability in that left hook. Alonzo Menifield thought that the best way to fight against that is to run headfirst into it. And he got knocked out immediately in that fight. Then got knocked out by Azamat Murzakanov, and then had a very close fight against Julius Walker. And the thing is, he's had better performances before. His performances have declined, and I don't understand what happened there, because he had a much better performance against Dustin Jacoby. He had a 5-fight unbeaten streak before losing to Ulberg. He submitted Jimmy Crute, destroyed Misha Serkunov, and then ever since Ulberg stood in front of him, he's never been the same. And by fighting Oumar Sy, I wonder, like, what do you think Alonzo Menifield's game plan is going to be against Oumar Sy. Maybe throw in like a rolling thunder kick and lay on his back for Oumar Sy to control for the entire 3 rounds. Like, and the way he was walking into Murzakinov's counter shots without adjusting his footwork at all, like, he's probably gonna do the same against Oumar Sy, right? Like, he's most likely gonna be very aggressive in those moments. Oumar Sy is going to counter him with strikes and takedowns and ultimately submit him in the 3rd round. So I'm going to go with Oumar Sy by a 3rd round submission. I can also see him knocking him out too. It should be a one-sided fight for Oumar Sy. And not too different with Cody Brundage versus Mansur Abdul-Malik. Mansur is an 8-1 favorite, bigger than Oumar Sy over Cody Brundage, who honestly might be in his prime. He just knocked out Julian Marquez, dropped him with a vicious right hand. He also performed very well against Bo Nickel, knocked out Zach Reese with a slam. Similar like Alonzo Menifield, he's powerful and explosive. He's also a decent wrestler, but the takedowns gonna be difficult against Mansur. Very strong in the clinch. His base is very sturdy. It's gonna be hard to knock him off balance. And he hits incredibly hard. Very powerful. Some of the explosive shots could get through. I mean, Nick Klein landed that spinning back elbow and rocked him. And then he got the takedown after landing that shot. So he could get hit by some of those explosive shots, but it's the same the other way around. I mean, Julian Marquez landed some big shots at Cody Brundage before he got knocked out. Those guys are trading, going to war, landing big uppercuts against each other, and Brundage can get very wild. And I think if Mansur starts landing punches like that, Brundage does not stand up against those, man. He's going to get dropped once Mansur starts landing those kind of shots. And he has very strong wrestling as well. So I'm going with Mansur Abdul-Malik by a 2nd round knockout. They're going to skater Cody Garbrandt versus Raoni Barcelos. He's got the new hair, a new face tattoo, a transformation that's going to begin the next title run for Cody Garbrandt. A fight between 2 veterans, and both are well-rounded. They could both strike well and wrestle well. You see more of that well-roundedness from Raoni Barcelos, who has taken down almost all of his opponents in the UFC and increased that to another level against Peyton Talbot. A lot more consistent with his shots in that fight. Got a total of 8 takedowns, and the most he had before that was 3 takedowns in a fight against Kyler Phillips and Kurt Holobaugh. But the thing is, both guys have excellent takedown defense, and both are explosive in the striking as well. I think Cody Garbrandt is more technical. He picks his shots a lot better and moves his head way more than Barcelos. Barcelos will sometimes keep his head still, and that is not good when he fights Garbrandt, because Garbrandt has a speed advantage against most guys he fights, and definitely going to be a lot faster than Barcelos. Barcelos needs to fight behind his jab, and if Garbrandt gets too aggressive, that's when you can start brawling more and win through that. Cody Garbrandt has not fought since April of last year, so maybe he's gotten a lot better, or he could be rusty, so it is an X factor going into the fight, whereas Barcelos just fought Peyton Talbot in January, and before that didn't fight for almost an entire year, and he looked good against Talbot. So I'm going to go with Cody Garbrandt in this fight by a decision. I think he needs to fight in that way. He can brawl. Of course, Cody can never brawl, even though he wants to. He just doesn't have a chin to brawl, which is crazy. Imagine having the mentality to go to war, but not have the body to go to war. You know, it's kind of like Cody Garbrandt. He doesn't have the chin. If he gets wild against Barcelos, he might get knocked out. The only thing that could go for him in that is that Barcelos is a lot slower, and he doesn't move his head as much. But then again, that was also true with Pedro Munoz. Pedro Munoz was slower, and he also doesn't move his head that much. He still knocked out Cody Garbrandt. So I think Cody has to stick and move, land some shots, move around, defend takedowns, and be very technical and elusive throughout the entire fight, fighting behind the speed advantage. He needs to. Don't stand right in front of Barcelos, and definitely do not brawl with him. So I'm going to go with Cody Garbrandt by decision. And then we're going to Edmen Shahbazyan versus Andre Petroski. This is most likely going to be a striker versus grappler matchup. Petroski's mostly a grappler. He's very good at it. He's strong on top and will just keep his opponent on the ground and not throw that much. It's not an exciting style to watch. When he fought Dylan Budka, he won the fight by a decision because of his wrestling, but only landed 23 significant strikes in the entire fight. In all 3 rounds, only 23 strikes? Come on, man. Then when he fought Josh Fremd, again, won a unanimous decision by his wrestling and only landed 12 significant strikes. And then against Adolfo Vieira, he landed 55 significant strikes and he didn't get a single takedown in the fight. Nearly the entire fight was standing and he only landed 55 significant strikes. He has to have like the lowest volume of any fighter in the UFC. But where it's boring, it can be very effective to win fights. So it's not going to be an exciting performance if he is winning, and he might win because Shahbazyan just doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. There are moments where he explodes out of takedowns, but he sometimes can be easier to control. In his Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, and Anthony Hernandez fights, he was controlled quite easily from the wrestling of those guys. And Petroski's very good there, so I can see him winning the fight. But if Shahbazyan defends the takedowns, he's knocking out Petroski. That guy cannot stand up with Shahbazyan at all. The only thing he has is the openings from his takedown threat, to land strikes, and when Petroski tries to set up his takedowns off his punches, Shahbazyan can counter him very well, just like he did against Dylan Budka. Budka threw a jab forward, Shahbazyan pulled away, landed the right hand counter, and finished the fight. So I think it's a tough fight to call. Very close. I can see Shahbazyan defending takedowns and getting the knockout. I can also see Petroski laying praying to a win. Maybe landing one takedown in each round and then only throwing like 20 strikes overall and winning the fight like that. Although he can be a boring fighter, his fighting style is effective to get wins. So I think Andre Petroski is going to win the fight by a decision in a lackluster performance. And then we go to the co-main event. Rose Namajunas versus Miranda Maverick. Another fight that isn't the most exciting. Rose is just not the same fighter at flyweight. She was so much better at strawweight. She hit harder in that weight class. She was faster in that weight class. And she fought with Trevor Whitman in her corner. It's crazy that he's not in her corner. She was 10 times the fighter that she is with him there. I still think she's going to win the fight though. Maverick is just incredibly slow. She's well-rounded. She can wrestle. She can somewhat strike. But Rose is just so much more technical. She's going to be doing laps around Maverick, landing jabs and straights and throwing high kicks. She could get some takedowns, but I think all she needs to do is just stick and move the entire fight. And Maverick missing most of her strikes. So I'm going with Rose Namajunas by a decision. And then we go to the main event. Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. A fantastic main event to a fight night card. These are the kind of fights that need the headline fight night cards. And Usman has returned. It's been a long year and a half since Usman has last fought. October 21st of 2023 was when he fought Khamzat Chimaev on short notice in the middleweight division and is now on a 3-fight loss streak. He has not fought once in 2024. Joaquin Buckley fought 4 times in 2024, and 3 of those wins were against ranked welterweights. He is undefeated in the UFC's welterweight division, 6-fight win streak, and is fighting to take Usman's spot. And Buckley will be arguably maybe 1 win away from getting a title shot because Islam's fighting JDM, right? So there's high stakes for this fight, man. Both guys need to win here, but Usman more desperately. He is fighting to keep his spot and try to rebound to a title shot again. And it feels like everybody's picking Buckley, but you cannot write off Usman. Usman has never looked bad in any fight. He has always performed, win or lose. All 3 of his losses, he has looked at least good enough to compete with the best in the world. So I am not writing off Usman whatsoever here. I'll say this. I think Buckley should win the fight. But if Usman even shows up as the version of when he fought Khamzat Chimaev, he is smoking Joaquin Buckley. A prime Usman, or even close enough to his prime form, beats Buckley any day. I think a lot of Buckley's chances of winning is on the belief that Usman's not the same fighter. Over the hill and washed. We have yet to see a washed Usman in the octagon, but with a year and a half without fighting, it is logical to think that he's just not going to be the same guy. It's almost like with Stipe. Stipe never looked bad until he fought John Jones, and everybody knew when he was going to fight John Jones, he was not going to be the same fighter. Now, 3.5 years off is different than 1.5 years, but still. I think Buckley should win the fight, but we cannot underrate Usman in this one. So, Kamaru Usman is a wrestle boxer. He's not, I wouldn't say he's well-rounded because he doesn't kick that well. He has some good like front kicks to the body, but overall doesn't kick at a high level. And he has very limited Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. He's mostly a wrestler and a boxer. That's his style. He's very powerful. He has one of the best jabs in the UFC in terms of damaging his opponent with them. He doesn't have the most technical jab, especially the retraction of it is the worst part of his jab. The startup is good. When he throws his jab, it's very good, very technical. But when he retracts the punch, he drops his hand, and that's where his opponent can land counter shots. Buckley can land a huge hook or overhand if he times the retraction of that jab correctly. It's actually how Colby Covington landed a lot of his counter shots on Usman. But his jab is very powerful from both stances. He has a good right straight and an excellent wrestler, but he wrestles more with his upper body because his knees are absolutely gone at this point. And if Buckley starts throwing oblique kicks and low side kicks, Usman might never walk again after this fight. Buckley might throw those kind of side kicks. I mean, he throws them to the body, so I can only imagine he'll throw him to the knee. But Usman is very strong in the clinch. He's a good wrestler up against the fence and has excellent body shots when he's clinched up with him. Now, Joaquin Buckley is more well-rounded, I would say. He has decent punches, good kicks, good footwork, very rapid with his movements, takes angles very quickly and throws combinations at the same time. Very versatile with his striking. And he can also wrestle. Now, I don't expect him to try to take down Usman unless he wants to set up his punches off of those. But to commit to the takedowns is not something that's going to work too well against Usman. And if it does, it probably just shows that Usman is washed. Because Usman's always had impeccable takedown defense. It took Khamzat in the first round, who seemingly nobody can defend against, to keep him on the ground. Buckley's not a high-level wrestler, but he can wrestle. And he also has solid takedown defense. I mean, he defended most of Colby's takedowns. And he is so explosive. I mean, that lunging hook he knocked out Stephen Thompson with was brutal. And those are the kind of shots he can knock out Usman with. But I think Buckley's biggest advantage here of how he can win this fight is, of course, if he times the jab and punches through when Usman drops his hand, but also moving on angles to get off the center line where Usman does his best work. The jab and straight and front kicks, most of his best strikes or on the center line. And if his opponent can move off of the center line and throw big hooks from there, they can land some of those shots on Usman. Buckley could do the same thing. He has very rapid footwork, very quick, and I could see him landing those kind of shots, dropping Usman and finishing the fight on the ground. So I'm gonna go with Joaquin Buckley by 3rd round TKO. Now, I don't think Usman is going to be at his best, and it's the reason why I am going with Buckley, but man, I really want to go with Usman in this one. I think it's a close fight, but I don't think he's going to be at his best. And it seems like both guys have at least decent cardio. Even in the 3rd round, Buckley's throwing power punches and not slowing down at all. Usman's been 5 rounds many times throughout his career, so I don't think either of them will gas out unless Usman invests with body shots. If he lands to the body throughout the entire fight, he could slow down Buckley and win the fight in the 4th and 5th, which is why I'm saying, man, you can't count out Usman. He's a veteran. He's one of the greatest welterweights of all time. He has performed well in all of his recent fights, and he has decent fight IQ, so I can imagine that could be a game plan of his to go to the body a lot and then take over the fight in the later rounds. But I am going to go with Joaquin Buckley with that 3rd round TKO, but I absolutely do not think that he should be as big of a favorite as they have him. Buckley is a minus 270 favorite against the plus 210 Kamaru Usman. That's all based on if Usman is washed, and that's it. But I think it should be closer. I don't think Usman's going to be as washed as the betting lines are. Namajunas is like a minus 255 against a plus 200 Miranda Maverick. I think Rose should be a bigger favorite. I just don't see how Maverick beats her. Shahbazyan is a minus 195 against like the plus 155-ish Andre Petroski. I have Petroski winning the fight. I can see how Edmen is the favorite, but I think Petroski's a good underdog there. Raoni Barcelos is the favorite against Cody Garbrandt. He's like a minus 200 against a plus 165-ish Garbrandt. I'm going with Garbrandt on that one, man. I think the speed advantage could be too much for Barcelos. Mansur Abdul-Malik is a minus 800 against the plus 550 Cody Brundage. He shouldn't be that big of a favorite, but I think he wins the fight. Minus 800 is like as if Brundage has no chance, and he does have a chance. Like, Mansur is not the best middleweight in the world or anything. Oumar C is a minus 700 against the plus 475 Alonzo Menifield. Again, more like a minus 400, I would say. Same as Mansur. Rodolfo Bellato is a minus 400 against a plus 300-ish Paul Craig. Yeah, I agree with that too. And then Malcolm Wellmaker is a minus 2,000 favorite against the plus 1,000 Kris Moutinho. Now, Wellmaker should be like a minus 800. Minus 2,000 is insane. Michael Chiesa is a minus 345 against a plus 270 Court McGee. I can agree with that. Jose Ochoa is a minus 190 against a plus 155 Cody Durden. I agree with that as well. Ricky Simon is a minus 500 against the plus 350 Cameron Smotherman. That's kind of crazy. Minus 500 for Ricky Simon? No way, man. More like minus 200. I would say. Smotherman could knock him out. Andre Lusa is like a minus 135 favorite against a plus 110 Phil Rowe. I agree with that. And then Jamie Lynn Horth is a minus 575 favorite against a plus 425 Vanessa Demopoulos. I would say more like minus 400, similar to some of the other fights, but she's a big favorite for sure. And those are my predictions for the Usman and Buckley fight card. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you guys did, make sure to give it a like, make sure to subscribe, and leave the comments below. Who do you guys think are going to win these fights? And I'll see you guys in the next video.